Savanna Hamilton, and I'm absolutely honored to be the host of this incredible evening. We're going to take some time to connect, to hear some inspiring stories from some amazing women in the sports industry. And at the intersection of gender, race, sports, the Huddle is a space where you could share stories, talk through challenges, and maybe even have a few laughs. Why not? Honestly, you got to lighten up a little bit sometimes. We're claiming this space. So this is our space. We could be ourselves here. Now, understand that this is a two-part series, and tonight's theme is the performance playbook, Mindfulness Over Matter. We're going to take a closer look at how we, as Black women, address issues of emotional and mental stress, especially during these, you know it, unprecedented times. And I mean in our personal life and our professional life as well. So last week, I had the opportunity to connect with two just outstanding women who work in the sports media, the sports industry, and get their personal stories on how they integrate mindfulness into their daily lives. Now, as a host and producer myself at MLSE, I am very familiar with the challenges that come with working in an industry that can prove to be mentally and emotionally challenging at times, you know? And so it's great and refreshing to connect with like-minded women. Listen, I love my job. I really do. I get to tell stories, I create meaningful content, and shed a light on what matters most to me personally and to people who, you know, look like me as well, all while using basketball as the vehicle to do so. And so in my daily job, though, you know, I struggle sometimes with that work-life balance can look like. And I think like us as most women, we take on the extra pressures of having to perform at our highest standards at all times. And it's truly hard to flip that switch off when you get home. So I'm grateful to share this space with everyone tonight. We're all sisters here, and I don't care if you're a man, you're a guy, and you're watching, welcome to the sisterhood. Happy you could join us. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into these stories in just a minute. But first, let's hear about the amazing organization that has put on the event together. Here to give us some more insight into the organization is one of the co-founders, Bailey Williams.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bailey Williams. I am one of the co-founders of The Standard. At The Standard, our intention, our hope, our vision is really to continue creating spaces for Black women in marketing across industries to connect, to conversate, to feel vulnerable, to ask questions, to learn from, and really engage with one another. And we do hope you experience any or all of those things this evening. Tonight, with the support of our incredible partners at the NBA and MLSE, we're focusing on the sports industry. And as a Black woman in sports myself, I really know how important it is to kind of connect with like-minded women in this space, and how much comfort it has brought me to have a system of support. Comfort is kind of paramount in these precarious times. And so we really wanted to focus tonight on mindfulness. So as we all continue to move through and forward, continuing to do the work, to show up for everyone else, to self-advocate, that we're really taking stock of our mental and emotional well-being. We're taking space that we need to refuel and to fill ourselves up with all the goodness and light that we truly deserve, and in turn can share with one another. So on behalf of The Standard, we thank you for your time and your energy, and we look forward to continuing to connect with you and build this amazing community.
I love Bailey. She has just done so much for the game of basketball here in Canada and internationally as well. It's so important to have organizations such as The Standard creating these opportunities for Black women and opportunities for us by us, where we can find comfort in our shared experience and have real conversations about our real experiences. And that creates the honest dialogue about, no, for real, how are you really feeling? Not, oh yeah, I'm good. No. I'm feeling okay. I'm not so good today, especially during these times. So, let's get straight to it. Before we dive into our program, first, we want to find out a little bit more about you, the attendees. So tonight, we have over 150 people joining us. I know from previous Standard events that our members are located all over the country. So to kick things off, we want to hear from you. So tell us, Where are you joining from tonight? I want to know. All right, I'm looking at the poll. Okay. So it looks like, we're from all over, like we said. It's so amazing to see just how many people from outside of Ontario also are with us. So, welcome as well. Thank you. The Standards seeks to represent and connect Black women nationwide. So it's great that the people from all over Canada are joining tonight. Thank you for your presence. And, we're about to dive into the program now. But if you'd like to stay connected with the Standard and support upcoming events and initiatives just like this, sign up for our mailing list, www.canadianblackstandard.com. You could also follow our socials at Canadian Black Standard. Links will be in the chat. Now, as I mentioned last week, I had the opportunity to connect with with women in sports to get their insight on how they integrate mindfulness into their daily lives. Marika Warner is the Director of Research and Evaluation at MLSE. Her portfolio includes program evaluation, academic research partnerships, technology innovation, but she's also an author, a dancer, and a mom. So to say that she's a busy woman is an understatement. However, you will see shortly that even with daily challenges, Marika has managed to turn an organization into something of a fine art. Now, equally as impressive is Cheryl Stalling. She is the Associate Vice President, Content and Business Operations at National Basketball Association, the NBA, and she specifically is in Asia and in India. She's a travel enthusiast who just so happened to return back from 5 years spent in India and Asia. She oversees the league's global and digital sports content for development, production, and programming in international markets. And you'll find that her experience comes through so clearly in her words. So looking forward to that shortly. Now, both of these women are incredible leaders who are making major impacts in their professional arenas. And I'm so grateful that they took the time out of their very, very busy lives to tell us a bit about how they navigate in their personal and professional spheres. Now, in our conversation, there are so many tips and truths that have been broken down into 5 plays to help you, of course, our audience, to build out what we're going to call a performance playbook that will hopefully help you to achieve greater mindfulness in your own lives. Now, first play is streamline your focus. One day, one challenge. Sometimes setting reasonable goals makes them more achievable, especially during a time when things are so uncertain. So I asked Marika and Cheryl about how they create and manage their goals. So we're going to take a listen to what they said. Marika, I'm going to go to you first with our first question in this segment. How do you personally set incremental goals, personally and professionally in your life and career?
My approach this year has been to create 2 or 3 goals that I'm going to focus on for each quarter in the calendar year instead of 5 or 6 bigger goals for the entire year. For my professional goals, my team has implemented a process over the past couple of years. We've gotten a lot more intentional about our planning. So you're not looking to attend to every aspect of your business for all 12 months of the year. Things can be on hold in your personal life and in your professional life. And that's okay. That's actually strategy.
The way you break it down, also in a very analytical sense, makes it just way more attainable. But, Cheryl, I'm very curious as to how you go about your goal setting as well.
Personally, I do monthly goals because I think they're more achievable for me, and I'm into celebrating the little wins. And then if I don't meet that goal after that month, I reevaluate it. I may roll it over to the next month, but if I have something else in place that I need to get to that's more important, that I think is more on my priority list, I'll push that goal first. And even if I don't meet the goal, it's not a failure to me. It's just something that I have to work more on. From a professional level, we used to do monthly goals, and now it's more quarterly because I felt like, again, our team felt too much pressure in meeting a monthly goal, and there's always changes that are going on in this world, especially with the pandemic. So we reevaluate everything on a monthly basis.
Give me a practical example of a goal that you would set personally or professionally.
I I used to be 40, 50 pounds heavier. And it was, again, a small goal because I used to eat a lot. So I would have a big plate and I would take that plate and I would say, okay, I'm going to leave one little thing left on this plate. And every day I would do that. So that would, be like a success rate for me to say, okay, I didn't eat everything on my plate. And now I'm moving and losing the weight and the goal that I want to. And my goal was to lose 50 pounds, but it wasn't 50 pounds by the end of the month. I had to be realistic on that.
Because weight loss, I think, is it hits home for a lot of women in particular. It's such a societal standard. And I think the way that we approach it and the way that we think of, body image and stuff like that, like it can be overwhelming sometimes. So I love that you just, let's leave something on my plate, just maybe like leave that on the side.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like this year I've approached a lot more sort of habit goals as well instead of achievement goals. And I started categorizing them that way too. So there's the achievement goals, right? The ones that you check off when it's done. And I have some of those for sure coming up later. But actually all my Q1 goals this year are habit goals. So ones that you check off every single day for 30 days or 90 days or however long it takes for that habit to really become part of who I am. They're really important as well. And one of mine for this first quarter is teaching my son how to clean up after himself. So, if I get him to carry his dishes to the counter or clean up his toys or put his pajamas in the laundry, I can check that goal off for the day. And I know that the cumulative effect of doing that every single day with him, I'm going to have a more mature, responsible, competent boy at the end of this first quarter of this year, which will be, a big win for me as well as for him.
Marika, have you ever read the book Atomic Habits?
No, but it's definitely on my list. Have you read it? Yeah,
I'm like almost done reading it now. And that's exactly what they talk about. They actually talk less about goal setting and more about habit building and breaking bad habits. For me personally, I set a goal for myself last year. I wanted to run a half marathon. And let me tell you, I used to be a former basketball player and running was my least favorite thing to do. However, during the pandemic, I feel like I really needed a healthy outlet to do something. And like, okay, I started with 5 kilometers. Okay, that was a bit of a challenge, work myself up to maybe 7 kilometers. And for some reason, to think I could do a half marathon felt like such a way out of reach. But I was like, no, if we just keep it maybe I try running 3 times a week. And maybe when I'm feeling good, because I also read how my body feels as well, I will start to push it a little bit further and a little bit further. And sure enough, like long before my actual date that I set, which was like October, I actually reached my goal at the end of July. And so it's amazing, like what you could actually accomplish when you build habits and do it consistently. It could actually get you a lot faster to the place you want to go as well. But we talked a lot about personal goals in this, but there's so much leakage that actually spills over to how you handle your professional goals. But we're going to get there in a little bit. We have a lot of show left. So we're going to head over to our second segment. I loved all of these tips, seeing the importance of consistency, creating habits, and building personal accountability while also giving yourself, of course, the grace and the space and measuring success in a way that's meaningful to you. Let me tell you, we ain't here to measure up to society standards because we already know who made those. Personally, I'm reading, as I mentioned, the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he does go into the psychology of habits and how they help us achieve our goals. But beyond that, he challenges us the way that we perceive goals as well in the first place. And he encourages us like kind of more of an ongoing lifestyle change instead of a final destination to be reached, as we often perceive goals to be. Now, a key piece of the puzzle is surrounding yourself with those who keep you accountable, grounded, and most importantly, honestly, feeling safe, which is the key to our second play. Build your team of like-minded individuals. How does one ensure to align themselves with their best personal team? How do you find your tribe? Listen to our conversation. I want to get really real here. I want to talk about, let's call it out. We are all 3 Black women working in a predominantly white male space in sports. That's just a fact. With that being said, I personally believe it's so important to find allies, supporters, people who look like us as well when we're navigating the sports industry. And we talked earlier about, building habits, building and goal setting, but a part of that is also building your circle that keeps you accountable to your goals as well. Has your personal circle changed at all throughout your career or your life? And if it has, how?
How my circle has changed? I look for a common culture. And I also look for women and people of color. Women and people of color. I'll say it again and again and again, because that you want to be around like-minded people. You talk about allyship, which I think is needed, mentorship. And to me, an allyship is someone that's an ally. They're also going to be there to give up something of themselves to help people and build them up and pull down that ladder for them. Because I'm big on that, and I'm big on action. So, even us at the NBA, our players, they speak up and speak out. We do that internally as well. We have like 8 or 9 ERTs, including Dream in Color, and then I'm a part of a social justice task force. So we work closely with our D&I and our human resources department. So my circle has definitely changed, and the trajectory has built from that. And again, working in a male-dominating space in sports and in India, so it pushed me more on that level of, okay, we have to get out there and look for like-minded people. We have to be out there and carry each other's back and know that if your circle's not changing, you're doing something wrong.
On a personal level, I made a lot more local friends, neighborhood friends, relationships with people that I've initiated solely because we live close to each other, which is really different from what I've done in the past. And a lot of those people have taken a lot of time to grow on me. And a lot of those relationships are still sort of maturing. Because I don't have a lot of trust that I'm going to have anything in common with the people that live in my neighborhood. I have a lot of suspicion that they're going to be racist. They're going to have a problem with me for whatever reason. So it's been a process of just being brave, talking to people. And okay, if I find out something about you that shows me that you are not an ally, right, I close that door, but no harm done. And now, I have a few folks that I can stop and chat with when I see them. I can go for a walk with maybe once in a while. And that's a huge benefit to me. And I think it's been really necessary, especially for people who are really extroverted like I am and who are stuck in this endless series of lockdowns and are essentially unable to do the thing that gives people like me the most energy, which is to socialize. It's been so important to build in those opportunities for sort of micro socialization.
To your point, Marika, I find it interesting how I personally feel as Black women, I have my guard up immediately. It's almost like, unless you're proven to be an ally, I don't know where you stand. And I'm almost going to, unfortunately, assume ignorance until proven wrong. And so, and oftentimes when I'm proven wrong, I'm so happy. I'm like, okay, we got one. Okay, this is great. Marika, going with you first, how do you personally feel? Because you have such a big role in MLSE, launchpad and change the game. How do you feel that MLSE has been fostering these types of environments?
Yeah, MLSE has made some strong commitments to improving our staff representation, as you're aware, of women, of racialized people, Black people, Indigenous people specifically. And, that's improving ratios. Our ratio was pretty poor to begin with, and these ratios are improving. I do see the work happening to ensure that we achieve those KPIs that we've set that are pretty ambitious. I think it's also become more acceptable to communicate our ideas in the way that we feel most comfortable doing, as long as you're able to get your idea across clearly. Instead of everyone just striving to maintain that, align with that very white upper middle class style of communication and of interaction that used to be considered the professional standard. I do see that really shifting. And I'll add, though, that I do see a lot of the burden of fostering these more diverse, equitable, inclusive environments being shouldered by the usual suspects, okay? Black women, women of color. We're still the ones who have to push ourselves out of our comfort zones, who have to make that effort to support a colleague who's just back from mat leave and is struggling. We're still teaching people how to treat us. We're booking the meeting before the meeting after the meeting. We're making sure everyone's okay. And that work can be rewarding, and it is always exhausting.
Same here. I mean, I think for us, well, just us as women, we have to work 2 and 3 times as hard. It is what it is. What I think we should not do is just don't stay in that negative attitude, move through it and turn it into something positive for yourself and for people behind you. The last 3 or 4 years, or maybe 5, it's more amplified because of everything that's going on. But it's people are also comfortable in their skin. They're comfortable in their zone. They're comfortable in speaking up and speaking out. they're comfortable in knowing that, okay, if this person is not treating fair, I have to speak up for them. We have to get away from those micro and macro aggressions. So, and then we work closely, like I said, with our diversity and inclusion department. So company as a whole, we look for people of color. We look for minorities. We look for women to see, okay, they were in this position. They were behind the shadows. Let's take them from behind the curtain and bring them in front and embrace it and help them and give them the tools along the way so that we can help them get to that executive leadership role that they want to get into.
Black women in particular, we're starting from such a disadvantage. And you're right, we do have to work 3 times, maybe even 4 times at times, as hard as our colleagues do. And I don't think they see that. And it's more so just we're always constantly in the state of proving. But at the same time, it's like, well, some of our other like people who look like us, Black women, they don't necessarily have the skill sets developed the way that other opportunities were given to our colleagues. And so it's so important to lift up. And I love that you mentioned development and like just taking you under your under their wing and really teaching them, because once again, like if they didn't have a mentor that looked like us, who's teaching them? Because that most likely that opportunity is a lot more rare. And we're going to get further down in our next third block about the roadblocks that we face. So I'm going to save some of this for that. But thank you for your vulnerability so far, guys. Like I said, this has been such an incredible conversation. Listen, finding your tribe is so important. Just before the start of this show, I had a girlfriend text me being, I cannot wait to watch and to learn. And she's such an incredible ally herself. So, you know, it just makes you feel that key word, safe. Now, I love this topic. I love the vulnerability that we were all able to share. And I can't wait to have your questions at the end of the show. Please don't be shy to share those with us then. But, you know, this topic of, you know, truly being represented and finding like-minded people, having a sense of community and support, especially as Black women, is so foundational. But it's almost revolutionary in the fact that we've been conditioned to think that there's no room or only room for one of us at the table. But being at the table, we can create space for others, and you know, we can push things forward. So as mentioned, I know that I'm so grateful for those who've done it for me. And, you know, I can't help but think about my mentors, you know, Dwayne Watson, Tony Francis. Those two have been such instrumental people in my lives who also happen to be Black. And they helped me get a show, Canada's first women's basketball show called SWISH, inside the WNBA. So that just goes to show you how crucial mentors truly are. Now, on that note, I want to check in with you guys and see how you guys have been feeling. I know that, you know, the last almost 2 years now, oh my goodness, has been filled with like just countless adjustments and changing work and personal situations and navigating new restrictions. And like, I don't know, one day we're in lockdown, one day we're not in lockdown. So, you know, it seems like the light at the end of the tunnel, you know, it could sometimes just be a more further tunnel than we're used to. So let's take another poll and see how we're feeling. All right. So, you know, if you guys have answered not at all, that you're great. You know, listen, I want to get your tips, but you know, if you're saying that you're okay, so am I. I had a bad migraine yesterday. I had to cancel some plans. I had to stay in. I had to, you know, just take care of myself. So I noticed that we're at coping was the top answer, and that was 72% of us. So I appreciate you guys being super honest. And also, if you're feeling negative, you're feeling down, like anxious and stressed, like, you know, I hope that you find peace. I know that when I was feeling anxious and a little bit yesterday, I did some yoga, and I don't even normally do yoga like that. So, you know, we got to find ways to cope through, and hopefully this conversation can resonate with you a little bit and make you feel a little bit better to know that you're not alone. So for each of those you who are struggling, you know, you hang in there. Just more than a sense of just the uncertainty apart from the pandemic, you know, there's everyday struggles too. There's issues big and small, and we continue to navigate through. It's not just unusual times, but in general, this next segment is useful tips recognizing the roadblocks. Okay, this one could have gone on for like 3 hours. This could be a whole show to itself. Are you putting mental and emotional energy into unproductive spaces? And how many hours are you spending on social media? I'm guilty of this one. Or worrying about people and places that you can't control? How do we better use those moments to serve our own mental health? So let's see what Marika and Cheryl offer up. Mental and emotional energy. And this is something that I've really had to reflect on this past year and even the past 2 years of 2020 with George Floyd's murder and work and how that translates, because I've come to a motto, if you will, in my head called protecting your peace. And Marika, you kind of touched on it a little bit in the last segment about how as Black women, we're constantly advocating for ourselves, why we are doing what we are doing, or why we should be doing something else, or bringing somebody else up because, and advocating for them when not, the system that we're in right now, it doesn't allow us to not do that. How do you take stock of your energy and how do you refuel mentally and emotionally?
One of my focuses, one of my approaches to this year is about honoring myself. And, I think we hear a lot as women about love yourself. It's so important to love yourself, self-love. And that's never resonated with me. But when I switch it to honor myself, then it becomes a lot more relatable and actionable for me when I'm making decisions every day, that I'm, acting in a way that honors who I am. The biggest thing for me is getting up very early. I get up between 5 and 5:30. I use that time first to make coffee, of course. Then I do my morning pages, which is a practice of writing 3 pages in handwriting, stream of consciousness writing on physical paper. Then I have a pretty good sense of where I'm at by, just before 5:30, 6 o'clock. Then I check in with my goals. I see if Marigold has any advice for me for the day. And Marigold is my inner mentor, who is a version of myself 20 years in the future. So she gives me a lot of advice, and I chat with her in the morning, see what she's suggesting for the day. I do a little bit of meditation. Then I get into my phone to read the news, check out my calendar, text some people, respond to some emails, and I try to wrap all that up by about 6:30 so I can maybe read a novel for 20 or 30 minutes before my son wakes up. And that morning ritual for me is just incredibly soothing.
I like that. I'm going to steal some of that from you.
Nice.
I mean, with me, I like to be a little bit of goofiness in my life. I believe, tomorrow's not promised. No one's perfect. And again, you have to live for today. I tend to set weekly regimens. Like in the morning, I will get up, I'll meditate now. I just actually started meditating over the last year, which I didn't think I was ever going to be able to do. So, and I also just know that if I fail at something, I'm okay. I have to learn not to be hard on myself like I used to. So, and I the saying goes, failure leads to success. Sometimes it does with me, sometimes it doesn't. I'm more realistic with myself. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, but I don't take that to core, where I don't look at people and say, okay, this person is happy. This whole team is happy. How come I'm not happy? Because, that'll bring you down. I have to learn to, I have to be the best version of myself. And once I start with that every day, I'm okay.
That's incredible. And I agree with you, Cheryl. I'm going to have to steal some points from Marika as well, in terms of, I love the fact that she said she talks to her future self, because I think there's a lot of in self-love, like I want to call it even a culture. Oh, what would you have said to your past self? No, what would your future self say to you right now? And I think that's also coming from a very loving and self-care place. I think your future self would want you to be happy right now too, and find strategies that cope and work. And I haven't really gotten into the meditation game too much, but I've been considering it, and now you guys are really convincing me here.
We all know what's going on. I'm not in this world to fake it, because that's not good for myself. It's not good for my inner peace. It's not good for my integrity. It's okay to say you're not okay today.
It's funny because I've learned the power of self-talk is so, so important. I think it's actually taking the easy route. If you go down the negative path and start pointing out the flaws or making yourself feel bad for feeling bad, which is like, a weird thing to think of or say, but it actually happens. And I know that like this past like couple of months here, like I said before, I was like, oh yeah, I had my goal of doing that half marathon. I got it, but then I let myself slip up. And so for me personally, it's been a matter of taking stock in my self-empathy. In fact, I think a part of overall happiness and maintaining your positive energy is allowing yourself to go through some things as well. I'm just like enjoying listening to the conversations back, like time and time again, as if I wasn't even the one hosting it. But, as Black women, we could feel so isolated because, we don't really see in our own environments sometimes. And I'll tell you right now that, I'm one of 2 Black female sports hosts in Canada. My friend, Kayla Gray, is the first one. And, it's a great way that we get, the opportunity to blaze a trail. But I always say, okay, but at what cost? And I refer to our mental fatigue and having to advocate for ourselves, just to have a chance at an opportunity, let alone the opportunity itself. So, and I know that even though that's my media world, it applies to so many other realms of business and space, take space in as well. So this really segues into our next play number 4, finding comfort in the uncomfortable. We're all experiencing, obviously global discomfort, the reprogramming of our thoughts, and it isn't always easy. So it takes work to reframe the way that we speak to ourselves. We mentioned it in that last segment, and it's not always a comfortable space to speak to yourself sometimes. As we know that your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your habits. I love that quote. Listen, that's like one of my favorite quotes. I wish I could say I made that up, but I didn't. So take a listen to how our guests handle being comfortable in the uncomfortable. All of us know what it's like to be the only Black woman in a room. All of us know what it's like to raise your voice when you really didn't want to be that person that has to raise their voice and speak up against something or for something. But, it was necessary to do. What was the most uncomfortable thing that you've done, and how did you grow from it? Cheryl, I'll start with you on this one.
I think, to your point, and also people always think that we as Black people were angry birds, and we're not. We just express ourselves differently. There was one time when I was in a meeting in India, when I had to speak up for one of my colleagues who happened to be a woman, because she just wasn't treated right, or they kept talking over her. And in her point that she was trying to get across, someone else made the same point, and all of a sudden everybody thought that point she made was the best thing in the world. So I in turn said, well, isn't that the point that so-and-so just made? Let her speak upon this topic because she's the one that thought about it first. So it put her on a spot a little bit after what I, spoke with her just to make sure she was okay with that. And she was actually very happy that someone else was in her corner to speak up for her. I said, well, I can speak up for you anytime you want to, but you should feel empowered to allow yourself to speak up as well, because we are all deserving of it. We speak about this all the time about us having the imposter syndrome, which we women have. We are great, and we should know that we are great.
I definitely feel, and I totally relate to that in a sense of having to tiptoe or having to, be worried about not coming off too blunt or too harsh just because I'm a Black woman, when I always think, well, if I was a white man, would this have come off harsh, or is this bold? Is this leadership? Is this a good quality to have? Wow. What a guy. No, like it's amazing. Even the tonality I use in my emails, it's called code switching, right? We code switch to make other people comfortable. And we shouldn't have to do that, but it's just a matter of the reality that we're living in. And I love the fact that, Cheryl, you advocated, you spoke up for that, because let me tell you, as somebody who personally, I was scared to speak up in rooms, if somebody gave me the mic just to be heard for a second, that meant so much, because you're so right. You do get spoken over as well, or diminished or dismissed in general. Something that comes to my mind in a personal example, more actually professional. I was invited to this big award to judge on a panel for an award ceremony, right? It's a big one for media in Canada. And I was the only Black woman in the room. And the first thing I thought of was, why am I here? because everybody else's titles were significantly higher. They're all execs at some of the top media companies in Canada. Like, why did they chose me to be here? And I couldn't help but think, okay, well, it's because I'm Black. It's because I'm a Black woman. But what I realized in that space that made me, one, very uncomfortable at first, but two, I realized I was so necessary. Like, I was a necessary part of that panel of judges, because there was a situation that occurred where one of the pieces that we were judging was downright prejudice and racist. Like, downright. There's no even sugarcoating it. We watched so much content come through for this panel, and this one was just flat out in your face. And the funny thing, well, not the funny thing really, is that everybody else was okay with it. Everybody else was actually about to give that piece of content a nomination. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Sports is supposed to be a safe space, and that content is not safe. But it made me realize just how valuable my voice really is in these spaces as well, regardless of my title. And yes, I do belong in that room, because I have done a lot. And I think as Black women, we walk on eggshells because we know how much it took for us to get here in the first place. To lose it is like 3 times more devastating. In that terms, like, how do we move on from our mistakes? Because mistakes is such a natural thing to occur.
The first place I start when I'm something up is I write about it in that morning writing that I spoke about. Another reason why for me it's really amazing to have that container built into my life. So I have a place every day to process whatever mistakes happened yesterday. So I'll write about why I did, what I learned from the outcome, and I'll reflect on my next best steps and whatever fixes I can make. And then if that private conversation with myself goes well, maybe I'll write those most salient points that I came up with down on a sticky note. And I might share some of them with the person who was most affected by my mistake, like my boss, if it was a professional error. I'll share some of those points. I hate being misunderstood, and I feel like I used to be misunderstood a lot. So it can be really helpful for me to explain why I did what I did without making excuses, but to help others understand why I messed up and what I'm going to do differently in the future.
The fact that I feel like as Black women, we're so fast to take accountability. And sometimes it's to a fault, because sometimes we didn't realize that we were set up, not necessarily to fail, but to have that mistake inevitably happen, because maybe one teammate didn't pull their weight, which inevitably made you bend over backwards in something else. And so you lost sight of this other task that you were supposed to do. And so I think that, yes, it's great quality that we take accountability for our own work. But at the same time, it's also acknowledging that it's not, most times, the mistake's not just on you. Wow. Yeah. Expanding on my last thought there, taking accountability for yourself, but not owning everything. Okay. That's not necessarily the easy thing to do, because I feel like we're so conditioned to just feel the weight of everyone's burden that setting those boundaries is just so important. Oh my gosh, don't get me started. Like, we could go on all night on that. Not only do we need to hold ourselves accountable, but we also need to acknowledge our successes. Like, give us our own standing ovation. Let us have the flowers. Tracking your own progress and taking pride in a sense of accomplishment to achieve your goals, regardless of how big or small it is a great way of practicing, just being kind to yourself. Perfection isn't the goal. Any step in the right direction is a reason to honestly be proud. So as we've heard from Marika and Cheryl, they have plenty to be proud of, I'm sure. So we'll see how they enjoy our final segment. So let's dive into play number 5, celebrating our wins. Once again, just appreciate you guys being completely vulnerable and sharing your stories. I don't think you understand just how much this resonates to me personally, but I'm sure to so many who are also watching this as well. So let's end on a high. Let's talk about celebrating our wins. Big or small, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Yeah, this is the hardest question for me. And I really tend to experience a lot of pride in the moment of accomplishment, but not really after the fact so much. But I do really deeply value my education, and I'm very proud of completing my graduate studies. It's a total cliche, but I'm going to say it. I worked in a strip club, and I dealt with some total nonsense to save up those U of T grad school dollars. And that degree has made so much possible for me. I will always be proud of that education because I did it on my terms.
Cheryl, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Me completing my MBA was one of my major accomplishments as well, being that it took me almost 10 years to finish it, just because from the field of work I'm in, I was always on the road, and the professors could care less. And at one point I was like, well, can I do this remotely? They were like, no, we don't do that. But lo and behold, the pandemic. So I was able to finish that. And the other accomplishment from a professional level was, when we had the global games in India, where we had the Sacramento Kings play against the Indiana Pacers. So that was the first ever global games in India. So that was an accomplishment I was very proud of, because I lived there for 5 years, and seeing us build up that brand and actually bringing a game to that country was awesome.
This is a question that I really want to pose. I'll go to you first, Marika, as well for this. When did you learn to feel worthy of success?
My voice is badly needed on my team, in my larger organization, and in my industry. And that for me was part of Black Lives Matter becoming part of the mainstream consciousness, part of the corporate consciousness. And that cultural shift really helped me learn to embrace what I bring to the table and really realize that I am built to win, and I'm built for this.
I think for me, it's been a trajectory of successes for me, and sometime going back to feeling negative, feeling positive. But I would have to say the past couple of years, owning myself, knowing that I have a voice, and not feeling like I have to apologize for anything. And speaking up, like I said before, and speaking out about my beliefs, and knowing at some point just not to care. It doesn't mean that I don't care, but I'm not looking out for what everyone else is thinking. I'm not looking to get your approval. It's the success of what I'm doing. My success is not the same as yours. So I also have to learn that I have to have that tunnel vision for Cheryl's success. And what is Cheryl's success only?
You know that you feel worthy of success as well. So you're not taking the losses as, oh my goodness, devastating. It's all about celebrating the wins as well. And for both of you, I'm kind of jealous in a sense, because I feel like this is a journey that I'm still on. I'm still figuring out how to exactly feel worthy. Because, I do think that, like, yes, of course, I put the work in. But when success happens, it's almost like a new feeling, like, okay, wait, how do I feel now? Like, okay, I got what I wanted. I got what I worked for. But it's like, how do I claim this? Do you have any rituals or habits when it comes to celebrating a win? Cheryl, I'll start with you.
My ritual is basically I have to live on purpose, for purpose, and by purpose. So that's the first thing I do. And when I do have a win, I celebrate by acknowledging it with my family, with my friends, and with colleagues, letting them know, hey, this was a little win I did. This is what you can do as well. And it's not a big win. And again, I go back to the fact that no one is perfect. So you have this little win, and I share and celebrate my little wins with everyone so that they can learn from that experience as well.
My response is really aligned with Cheryl's. It's really about sharing the win. So I'm getting better in the last couple of years about telling people in my life, at least one person, if not everybody, when I do have a big win. And it does feel really good. And what also helps me in the wake of a big success is shouting out the people that helped me with that win. I love to big up the people around me. And doing that sort of also forces me to big up myself.
I love that. And that's how I would have to say, like, even though I'm still on this journey, the one thing that really gives me joy is bringing other people into it as well. Like, for example, the SWISH show, like I would never have been able to do that without such an amazing producer behind my back as well. So, it's like, it feels amazing when you get to tell your friends and family about what you're doing and having them celebrate you too, because I think, when you're in a certain position in life, jealousy can occur, and like maybe they'll celebrate it, but not really. They'll almost, get defensive or kind of being like, oh, that's nice, or diminish it a little bit. So when you have authentic people that are in your circle, and we talked about building your team and who you trust, it means the world to me personally, at least, when they are authentically happy for me and they're just like celebrating the win with me as well. This has been such an eye-opening conversation, just in terms of, one, relatability, two, just learning and growth. And so I do want to take our audience's questions and thoughts and feelings and incorporate it into this as well. So we're going to head over to them now. Listen, we could have talked for days, and I'm sure all the questions rolling in now will inspire even more conversation. I don't want to take up too much time and cut into that. So let's just dive right in. Please welcome to our live event, Cheryl Okay. Please welcome to our live event, Cheryl and Marika, for joining me again to expand on this roundtable conversation, answer your questions. Welcome, guys. Like, so good to see you again and share this space. Thank you for offering such great insight. Good to have you guys back.
Good to be here.
Happy to be here.
Okay, let's get to it. Our first one is from my girl, Zara. She works with the Toronto Raptors. She's a massage therapist for the team. She's a woman of color and, of course, a men's pro sports. She just asked me, how do you practice mindfulness without judgment or criticism? Cheryl, I'll go to you first on this one.
It's difficult, but it can be done. It took me a while to get to that point and to learn not to judge people. And you don't know what that next individual is going through. So I tried to learn to figure out, okay, what is this individual like? What are the characters that they possess that I possess? And also, they may be going through something that I don't know about. They could be really depressed, having a really bad day. So I have to learn to know that every individual is different. What they're going through, I may not be going through. So I have to learn basically not to judge.
I mean, my first response there is like, why does anyone need to know that you're practicing mindfulness in the moment? For me, mindfulness is about coming back to my body, coming back to my breath. And that's something that happens internally, right? That's something that no one needs to know about and therefore can't judge me on. Yeah, and I think it's also about limiting multitasking as well, which is like a very easy thing to do and something that offers a lot to those around you as well.
We got a question here for Cheryl. Cheryl, how does working in India impact your experience?
Well, it definitely changed how I think moving forward as a woman in general, and just from being in the States. It's a different culture. I love it there. I would not trade my experience for the world. It was definitely challenging, but it also taught me that I have to be a little more vulnerable, and at the same time, I have to be a little more aggressive with how I do things. Women are respected there. I know a lot of people say they aren't, but I guess it depends on where you go. Our region, our office was great to work with. It's small, it's like 20, 25 people there. So it just taught me a lot about life. It taught me like, okay, once I come back to the States, I just think and move differently. I have more respect for myself and for people. And I also learned that, okay, I have to do more giving back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wow. We have another question coming in for Marika here. How does working in a men's pro sports league and just sports in general impact your mindfulness?
Yeah, I think it's some things that we discussed in the conversation that was played today, but it's around being aware that I'm a positive gatekeeper for people like me, and just trying to keep that in mind, that I'm the one who can open the door to others, and I need to always be conscious of that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we have another one from Danielle. It was mentioned about setting boundaries, both professionally and personally. How would you say it's a great way to set those boundaries professionally without coming across as difficult or not a team player in the office, Cheryl?
You just have to be honest with yourself. I mean, because again, no one's perfect and no one's going to look out for you but you. If you don't set your own boundaries, someone will take advantage of you. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're living in this world and society today where, again, I always talk about people speak up and speak out. But we're known to do that now. You can still do it in a professional, calm way, but you have to speak up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think it's keeping positivity and joy in expressing those boundaries. Like, boundaries don't need to be expressed in a negative sense, right? It doesn't need to be something that you're scared of or that's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've developed a boundary this past year more so than anything. Is like, okay, I'm prioritizing my sleep schedule. I kind of had a rude awakening last year when, I'll be completely honest with you, I fainted like on the job basically. And I was like, okay, well, why did I just faint? And it wasn't anything too serious, thank God. But I was like, yeah, because I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't sleeping properly. And I was just like work mode, work. And it actually made me realize, wait, I need to start prioritizing my health and my safety before I take steps my work life. That's also, at the end of the day, it's also affecting your work as well. So for sure, I have another question coming in for you. What do you feel is the gift that you leave when you exit a room, especially full of men?
That I'm respected, that my voice is being heard, that, when we have a seat at the table, it's not a folding chair, it's a seat that's going to stay there permanently. And they have to know that we are serious and just as important and just as smart, and we belong there. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't.
I love that. It's not a folding chair. I love that. Marika, here's a question for you coming in. I heard that you're doing race-based research data. What key outcomes are you looking to find?
Yeah, so this probably relates to the Change the Game research project, which is a big project my team executed last year. Shout out my one of my colleagues, Brian Heel, lead on that project. But that project is all around youth sport access, equity, engagement, particularly a challenge in the wake of the pandemic. And what we're really trying to figure out there is, what does inclusion really mean in sport beyond sort of the super surface level things of like, okay, make the program free, put it in a neighborhood where youth have access to the facility. But what does it really mean to build a radically inclusive environment in sports that's different from what we had before? So that folks feel comfortable, feel welcome, that there's not that intimidation factor entering into sport contexts.
Yeah. And, that's like such great findings to be looking for as well. But, there's a great question that just came in to the chat here. Any tips on overcoming imposter syndrome? Thank you for the question, Layla. Cheryl, I'll go to you first on that one.
We all go through imposter syndrome. So do men. They just don't say it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to speak up more. And just remind yourself, you are in that spot, in that position for a reason, and you belong there. We are all bad blank women, and we need to keep saying that to ourselves because it's true. You practice what you preach. And I always say the tongue is a powerful thing. So you think negative, you're going to be negative. Mm-hmm. Have those positive thoughts. And if you don't know something, you fake it until you make it.
Yes. Yeah, fake it until you make it. That's 100%. But I think, and it's also looking for that evidence. Like if I'm constantly having thoughts, which I often have, of, my boss doesn't really care what I think. She's not interested in my opinion. Then I think about it. I'm like, well, you know what? She listens when you talk. She gives you raises. She continues to employ you. She probably cares what you think, right? So it's looking for those counter narratives sometimes.
Absolutely. I think we're almost at time. I think we have time for just 2 more questions coming in here. So this is from Tracy. This is from Marika. How did taking on this mostly non-clinical role influence how you identify professionally? And was there an internal process that you had to go through to make sure the transition was successful?
Yeah, so great. I mean, yes, big question. Wow. So, I mean, for me, the role that I'm in, and I've been with MLSE now for 6 seasons, and it really brings together like all sorts of different aspects of myself. Like I was a professional dancer, dance instructor, choreographer. I was a physical therapist. Then I was a public health, population health researcher. So really, job for me is just the culmination of all of that. So it wasn't so much a shift in my identity or a struggle, but it was really like a personal evolution, to Marika 2.0 or whatever that was going to be, which was something to celebrate for sure. And which was not a challenging transition for me. It was like, for me, my experience of becoming a mother was just positive and was just like, yes, this is a role I can thrive in. And I really felt the same way coming into my role at MLSE in a lot of ways.
I love hearing that. And Cheryl, just before we go, here's a question for you. How long did it take to bring the NBA to India, and what challenges did that come with?
I went there in 2015, and the region was there a couple of years before I joined. There's still challenges today because cricket's the #1 sport there. It's a religion. So we work with the different broadcast companies, different digital partners, to expand again, like I said, on a digital point of view, the distribution, the content, merchandise, and everything else that goes incorporated into building that brand together. So it still is challenging, but I think we've come a long way. We're not number 10, so our goal is to be number 10, then move to number 5. But it's baby steps. There's more viewership now. There's more engagement. So we're gonna still celebrate the little wins while we can.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you guys for taking the time to join us this evening. As of also last week, it was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian.
All right, we're going to wrap this conversation up. It was, we had some incredible leaders in the sports industry. So, of course, we need to do a bit of a playback review to make sure you guys didn't forget anything. So, play number 1, streamline your focus, one day, one challenge. Play number 2, build your team, find like-minded individuals. Number 3, recognize roadblocks. And number 4, find comfort in the uncomfortable. 5, celebrate the wins. Now, we hope that you've taken these tips and these thoughts away from the evening. And although we're lucky to dive into some real truth and receive tips from amazing Black women who are dealing with the highs and lows of navigating their personal and professional lives, it's important to remember that although we're experts in the sport industry, we're also not health experts. So supplementing tonight's event, the Standard is taking time to pull together a list of resources and highlighting experts, organizations, and services across the country that you can leverage if need be. So keep your eye on your email, as that will be dropping in your inbox later. Now, before we wrap up the event, I want to invite once again the Standard co-founders, remember there's 2 of them, to share some parting words. And this time it's going to be from one of my sport industry friends, Chantel Smith.
Hi, thank you. You killed it tonight. There's actually more than 2 of us. There's 13 co-founders, so I am just one of them. But
my apologies.
This is such a fun evening. So on behalf of the Canadian Black Standard, we have many thank yous. First and foremost to our founding partners, both the NBA and MLSE. Leah, Cheryl, Danielle, Shannon, Shauna, Helen, and their teams have been best in class in supporting our mission from year 1. So we thank you for investing in our community. Cheryl Stallings, as a fellow NBA employee and a Black woman, I feel a sense of connection with you. So thank you so much for taking the time and being 100% authentic. I know your insights on mental health and well-being will help so many women. Marika, thank you for ensuring that there's data to back up what we all have known to be true for Black women. Your expertise is so needed at this time. Canada needs more of you. And last but not least, our talented Huddle host, Savanna Hamilton. Thank you for facilitating this conversation to really help set the tone for 2022. This is going to be another challenging year, but with the tips and plays that we've learned today, hopefully we can all be better prepared for what comes our way. And to all the lovely people who tuned in for the inaugural Huddle, thank you so much for making space in your day to join the Standard. It's clear to see that mental health and well-being continues to be a priority for the community. Now, today's event is just part 1 of the Huddle experience powered by the NBA and MLSE. So stay tuned for part 2 coming this spring. Be sure to follow us on social and visit our website at thecanadianblackstandard.com. So back to you, Savanna.
Thank you so much, Chantel. I'm just going to do a quick wrap as we have less than a minute left here. I hope everyone is feeling energized, and we thank all of you for your openness and your vulnerability. If you haven't already, please stay connected to the Canadian Black Standard on Instagram and LinkedIn. Keep up to date for all of our future events. The live links are in the chat. That will make it that much easier for you to access there, of course. Also, I know that many of you guys had questions from the Q&A that we didn't have time to answer. I just got word from the Standard that they are keeping the Zoom meeting room open after this broadcast. Sounds like the after party. So you can go there to keep the conversation going. Stay online. I'll probably join in myself. Several of the Standard co-founders are here, and they're excited to connect with you one-on-one. Thank you again, and have a great night. Thanks for joining us.